You've got a great idea for a small business, but you just can't get it off the ground. You want to be your own boss, set your own hours. Well, new year means new opportunities, and Shopify's got you covered to help get your venture off the ground. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. You can get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. And they help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard. Don't kick yourself next holiday season when your 2025 resolution list looks the same as it does today. Make it happen with Shopify. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/income.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Slow Burn Media, Evergreen Podcasts, and Killer Podcast presents Who Killed, a podcast that provides a voice for the voiceless.
It's all this stuff that's on the news. I just found my cousin with a gunshot wound.
Okay, sir, is he alive?
No.
Good evening. They were all shot in the head, execution style. 8 members of the same extended family living in a rural part of southern Ohio.
Man, you gotta tell me what's going on. There's blood all over the house.
Authorities found marijuana grow operations at 3 of the 4 crime scenes. That has now led to speculation that the killings may be drug-related. The state crime lab is analyzing more than 100 pieces of evidence right now. Investigators have also fielded more than 450 tips and interviewed nearly 130 people. Investigators are still asking anyone with information to call this number, 855-BCI-OHIO.
There's plenty of places for people to grow marijuana. We're also a very, very poor county, one of the poorest counties in the state of Ohio, and people grow marijuana as a cash crop.
There was, of course, a family that was targeted. The Rhoden family was targeted, and so we have talked with the members of the Rhoden family and expressed our concern about their safety. And ask them to be extremely cautious.
I think, we can speculate what the motive was. You can talk about revenge, you can talk about drug-related, but frankly, we just don't know.
We do not know whether we're talking about one individual or 2 or 3 or more. We simply do not know that at this point.
Hopefully soon some healing will begin. I don't know when, but I hope soon, for their sake.
It looks like they're dead. You think they're both dead? I think they're both dead.
Now, as of right now, DeWine says about 30 people have been questioned about today's event. So far, there are no persons of interest. As we speak right now, investigators are still looking for clues at that crime scene. We're live in Piketon. Craig, we'll send it back to you.
Extremely emotional. Very, very emotional service.
I've served locally for 20 years in law enforcement, and never have I ever imagined such devastation to a family, to a county, to myself or staff.
5 years to the day that 8 family members were found dead in southern Ohio, launching the largest murder investigation in state history. One of the key suspects pleads guilty. Jake Wagner pled guilty to 23 counts related to the Pike County Massacre.
Hello and welcome to Who Killed? I'm your host, Bill Huffman, and this is a Slow Burn Media production. On this week's episode, we will be concluding my conversation with the one and only Nick of the True Crime Garage podcast as we discuss the Pike County Massacre and the murder of the Rhoden family and the eventual guilty pleas by one Jake Wagner. So let's jump into my conversation with Nick, and again, thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Who Killed the Rhoden Family. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to harp on it too much, but it's kind of like we talked about it with the Amy Mihaljevic stuff and the update that they had back in Sweeps Week winter. Gee, that went somewhere. Nope. And again,
you and I had very different opinions on that, and you're right. It's all wow, that went silent real quick.
What's your opinion on it now?
Well, let's stay away from that. But as you were pointing out, one of the victims, again, the headlines were 8 members of family shot execution style, and we know that it wasn't all execution style.
Mm-mm.
One of these guys, and again, I'm going off of memory. They did announce who it was. My mind goes to Christopher Rhoden, who I think was the oldest, Christopher Rhoden Sr.
Okay.
I think it was he. I think he was the one that was shot 9 times. And what their thought was that he was one of the few, if not the only one, that was actually believed to be awake when the intruder or intruders entered the home. So he's shot so many times because it's an active shooting situation where you're not walking up to someone in their bed and putting the gun to their head and shooting them. This is, okay, this man is going to either flee from you or charge at you, and now you're firing at them while they are in motion. So much so that one of the shots went into the forearm of this man, and it's believed that he would have been either raising his hand to maybe approach the shooter and take the gun, or what's most likely is you simply, in a panic, you put your hands in front of your face in some kind of method to defend yourself in some way. And so he shot 9 times. A few of them were shot multiple times, and that
5 times.
It could be because they woke up. I mean,
gunshots are loud. I mean, the older people are going to wake up. I can understand why the kids, the babies or whatever, are, let's just put it this way. You can probably get away with killing a couple people in their sleep, but eventually somebody's going to wake up from the gunshots.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's the situation. Sadly,
but only
I think it was it 41 shots?
No,
fired?
Only 32. I was just going to say
32 shots.
32 shots. So 9 bullets in Christopher, 5 in multiple victims. And then, you probably got a couple people that they were able to kill, in their sleep and not put up a fight. But I mean, again, these were, when they say execution style, I think what they're trying to convey is that they were caught off guard. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like a cheap shot when it comes to like a bar fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And they're
Sucker
also
punch.
pointing out that in most of this situation, there was no real struggle.
No, that's right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Perp and victim.
Exactly.
And I misspoke again here, Bill, but Kenneth Rhoden was the oldest victim. He was 44. He's the brother of Christopher Rhoden Sr. He's the one that was found by himself. He lived alone. He was the one found by the cousin. He was shot in the eye. So to me, that looks like he either was shot in his sleep or woke up a split second before the trigger was being pulled.
Yeah. Or, depending on where his body was found, it could.
I think he was found in his bed.
Oh, okay. Well, then
I'm not certain.
That would explain that, in my opinion. So you have 8 victims and 32 shots, and one of them taking 9, and 2 others taking 10. 10. I mean, that is very efficient killing. No, not trying to put any not trying to be flippant about it, but
again, the majority of them found in their beds, so they're
true. But the way that I read it, and this is interesting, I like your take on the autopsy, because I had a different thought, and I was under the impression they did not release who it was, and I thought that might have been one of the reasons they didn't release it was because of the fact that may have been the that may have been the target
information,
or that was the target. Because
it's overkill because they were the actual target. And forgive me, Bill, because I don't know for certain when that information was released. It could have been they could have said who was shot 9 times after an arrest was made.
Right.
And so, yeah, that could have been hold back information. I would think that you would want to, because here's what I envision in this investigation, that you're walking into these scenes. Okay. The first scene, when it's first discovered, the first family,
Mm-hmm.
every investigator, every police officer's thought is going to be, oh, this is a murder-suicide. This is a guy or some crazy teenage boy. It's often men that do this, wiped out their family and then turn the gun on themselves. And then very quickly you find no gun in anybody's hand or at their feet, or maybe even in the house. That would be hard for me to believe given where they lived in Southern Ohio.
Yeah, they never released how many guns were found or anything like that. So that I mean, I'm sure that will come out now that there's stuff happening.
Yeah. So you quickly rule that out, but then with your investigation, you're going, okay, well, what is the crime scene presenting to us as investigators? When we're seeing a situation where, other than bullets left inside of people, the killer or killers did not seem to leave much, if any, trace of themselves. There's not a whole lot of physical evidence leading you or connecting you to the perpetrator. So you need that holdback information. Look, killing is nasty business, and thank God it doesn't happen too often.
Mm-hmm.
I know our murder rates, unfortunately, in the last year or so have been going up in most of the major cities here in the United States, but it's still a rare thing for one person's lifetime, for an individual. And so if you shot Jimmy 1 time in the head and you shot Johnny 9 times as he was rushing at you or running from you, you're probably going to remember that you shot Johnny 9 times and Jimmy 1 time. And that's holdback information that you're going to keep once you hopefully get people to talk, be it people that know the killers or the killers themselves.
Yeah. And I think when going back to the sheriff's statement about the family members holding back information and the fact that we were going to arrest whoever lied to us, or if you've lied to us, we'll arrest you and charge you. It was really interesting. Then, 2 years later, like in 2018, I believe it was, when DeWine started asking for the public's assistance in Alaska about a family that had just moved up there. And this was the Wagner family. And this is according to Alaska News. Quote, Brad Conklin said the Wagners recently moved in nearby. He stopped by to warn them of bears in the area, he said. Quote, Monday morning when I drove by, I see them putting out kids' toys, and actually I'm going to let them know what we do have a bear up. Yeah, anyway, that quote sucks. But anyway, he says
they have a bear in the area, and hey,
yeah,
watch your kids, man. There's
watch your kids. And they go, after they alerted him about the bears, Conklin said Jake, keep that, pin that, told him they had a 12-gauge shotgun. He said he was going to go out and get some decent shotgun shells for it because all they have is a shotgun.
I did find, kind of circling back here, I did find an article or two that made mention of, at least on one of the properties, maybe this quote unquote grow operation was significantly bigger than at the other 2 properties.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe even some plants were being grown indoors. And I believe it was thought that there could have been 100 or more plants
which
in
is
this indoor facility, or whatever it was. I don't know if it was like a greenhouse or someone's basement or attic, but and there really in lies. We'll kind of peel back the curtain here a bit here, Bill. When this case first broke, because me and the captain are Ohio boys and we are, we broadcast out of our garage here in Ohio, people really wanted us to take on this case. And it's very rare that we shy away from a case. We had 2 conversations about this when the case suggestion of Pike County started pouring in our email boxes. And the two conversations could not have been more different. So one week we're talking about a 10-minute, 15 conversation, and we are all jazzed up. We're pumped up. We're like, yeah, we're going to cover this Pike County thing. We're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to help to, we're here in Ohio. Hopefully we can present some things that we're hearing and seeing that maybe the rest of the nation isn't hearing and seeing because they're further away. We were super stoked about it. Of course, super tragedy. We're not trying to get a kick out of anybody's tragedy here, but we have to cover a case every week. That's what we do. And this is one that was pouring into our inbox with suggestions. Very quickly, Bill, the next week we had a completely different conversation that was like, all right, we don't know that we believe this cartel business, but whoever did this, obviously their main concern is not getting caught and shutting people up. And we are less than one tank of gas away from the murder scenes. Maybe not a great idea for two idiots in their garage to start spouting off at the mouth about this case. And so we decided to put it on the back burner and kind of revisit it from time to time to consider covering it. And again, I'm not proud to say that we shied away from covering the case. That's not something that we typically do. And this is the only case that I can think of where we had that type of conversation or those thoughts. But then, and you might want to, the captain had some interesting ties to that area, knowing some people from that area. And the rumors, so he's hearing secondhand the rumors, the local rumors that were coming out about this case. And in a weird way, they kind of mirrored the cartel thought, not so much the Mexican cartel or anything of like a high level. I'm talking more like cornbread mafia. And I know the cornbread mafia has been out of operation and operated, I believe, in Kentucky. So we're not talking about the same area of the country, but a similar type of thing where you have, look, and I'm allowed to say this because I'm from Ohio, you have rednecks and hillbillies running these little drug operations, and they do compete with one another. And sometimes it can get deadly.
Yeah.
And the rumors he was telling me that he was hearing, the local rumors and scuttlebutt at the time was that it was in some form, and there were two prevailing theories that were tied to drugs and tied to something that someone in the Rhoden family was doing. And so when we were being fed that information, it was even more of a reason to not cover it, to not talk about it. Look, I have stuff that I want to do in life. I have plans and goals. I have a family. I want to see tomorrow. So one of the theories, though, that was coming out seemed incredibly interesting. It had drug ties, but it didn't have anything to do with the cartel, didn't have anything to do with the quote unquote grow operations, marijuana grow operations. It was more tied to hillbilly heroin, meth. And one of the theories that was going around town at the time was that there was an ongoing family feud between the Rhodens and this individual who had lost someone in their life, someone close to them, to meth or to actual heroin. I don't know which, but and again, this is all stuff that we were talking about 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Right.
But so I'm going off of memory here, and I want to be very clear about this to anybody listening out there. There is zero evidence that I could find looking into it current day that the Rhodens had anything to do with meth or heroin or anything like that. But in the parameters of that theory, that was part of it. And that this was some kind of revenge killing that these people were warned to shut down whatever they were doing, and they didn't do it. And it had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with drug territory. It had everything to do with the revenge of, whatever you're doing caused me to lose a loved one. I'm gonna turn the tables.
Yeah, I that's the one thing about a lot of these cases that I think is very interesting, in the sense that you have all these different wild theories, the cockfighting, the cartels, or the local drug dispute. And unfortunately, with these cases, people get their hopes up in the sense that this is like some grand conspiracy or some like you said, like the cornbread mafia, connected to something that is greater than what the actual answer is. And I feel like in a lot of cases, ultimately, the people that really get into investigating them and doing their armchair detective work, this was a bit of a letdown, I think, to them, to what eventually happened.
Well, it's easy to get wrapped up into, well, this must be part of some bigger grand scheme. There must be something really incredibly interesting here, and some and you know what? In my opinion, there was the people that carried these out. This was not only well thought out, well planned, but I believe probably practiced in some form leading up to the killings itself. And they were doing a lot of things to, it was almost like warfare in a way. They were using technology and all kinds of different schemes and stuff to execute and carry out these murders. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think that's the way that it works for the armchair sleuths and detectives out there, that anytime you work one of these cases as a hobby, or you spend a lot of time, invest a lot of time reading and studying a case, I think it's often it will be a letdown. When they catch Amy Mihaljevich's killer,
right?
Most people are going to be let down that it wasn't some big bad boogeyman that had killed other people or done other horrible crimes. Turns out it was just some guy that kind of knew the family and didn't really do anything after that, and probably lived some really stupid, miserable, terrible life filled with alcohol and meaningless jobs and constant letdown throughout their loser life. That's probably who it's going to turn out to be. Bridge guy in the Delphi double homicides, he's going to turn out to be some loser that just happened to be at the trail that day. It's not going to be some guy that's been posting cryptic messages online and chat boards, it's who's, I've been, playing mind games with armchair detectives and real law enforcement throughout the years, teasing and taunting them. No, it's going to be some freaking fat loser that lives in his mom and dad's basement. I think that is the same here. But I think, push that aside, because I do think that there is a lot of interesting things here when we find out who is involved and how they probably worked on this. And again, I believe they planned and even practiced this stuff well in advance. And before you give your thought here, Bill, I want to make sure, because I have a couple of things on my notes that I wanted to make sure that we do include.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to give a shout out to Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. People in Ohio will know Jeff Ruby Steaks.
Yep.
Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, I believe, started in Cincinnati. I'm not certain about that.
He's at least located in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and they have a Columbus location as well. There's multiple locations, probably even throughout the United States at this point. But Jeff Ruby and his company, they put up $25,000, if I recall correctly, in this case, in the Pike County massacre, for reward money leading to information that would lead to an arrest. Jeff Ruby is somebody that I enjoy the steaks in the restaurant, but I have a lot of fondness for in Westerville, Ohio, which I was living near Westerville in 2018, in February of 2018, when two police officers, Westerville suburban police officers, were killed. They were ambushed when they arrived to a domestic assault call. And this was the murders of officers Eric Jorain and Anthony Morelli. They were killed in the line of duty by some complete a-hole that gunned them down. They didn't even have a chance to defend themselves when they arrived. And Jeff Ruby put up some money to help out the families of both of those fallen officers. So I wanted to make sure we give a little kudos where kudos is due, my friend.
Let's hear from this week's sponsor, BetterHelp.com. As you guys know, 2020 was terrible, and things are still pretty terrible. But today I am happy to tell you about BetterHelp.com. Because if there's anything that's holding you back or interfering with your happiness, BetterHelp Online Counseling is there for you. You can connect with a professional counselor in a safe and private online environment. And it's really convenient because with the current state of the world, it really needs to be. So now you can get help on your own time and at your own pace. All you have to do is schedule secure video or phone sessions, and you can also chat and text with your therapist. BetterHelp really is there for you. They have over 3,000 U.S. licensed therapists across all 50 states. And if, for whatever reason, you aren't happy with your counselor, you can request a new one at any time. They even have apps for your smartphone or your computer, so you are never out of touch. So again, if you're suffering from anxiety or depression, anger, stress, relationship issues, heck, not getting good enough night's sleep, trauma, LGBT matters, they literally have a licensed professional counselor for you. And of course, everything you share is confidential. And the thing I like most is that this is actually an affordable option. And Who Killed listeners get 10% off their first month with the discount code WHO. So when I get started today, go to betterhelp.com/who. All you have to do is fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get you matched with a counselor that you'll love. Again, for 10% off, go to betterhelp.com/who. All right, we are back. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think when with that reward too, though, he pulled the reward when it became a grow operation. Yeah, there was something about that I came across where the reward was actually taken off the table. But either way, it definitely was nice of him, and it's great to have people like that in the state that do these kind of things. And we need to have people like that do put out money and put up resources.
Yes, it's a responsible, right thing to do. These successful businesses rely on the communities to support and build their businesses. So I love when I see successful business people help out the community in trade. It's a trade-off, but it's a responsible, respectful thing to do. So I just wanted to make sure we gave a quick shout out.
Yeah, and basically the way, I didn't want to mean that it was a disappointment as far as what eventually happened. And, what eventually did happen was, basically the Wagner family, for the Wagners, it was DeWine announced that George Billy Wagner III, Angela Wagner, George Wagner IV, and Edward Jake Wagner, were arrested for the murders of the Rhoden family. And it's what is really interesting about the fact that the 4 other family members were arrested, and the connection was that Jake Wagner actually had a baby with, I believe it was Hannah, and so there was a family tie and there was a custody issue, yada yada yada. But what is really interesting, and I think we'll find out a lot more as this case progresses, is that Jake is actually pled guilty, and just recently, and he is going to testify against his family. So what kind of things will come out in that particular trial, or will they? I mean, that will be interesting as hell to me if he wasn't the mastermind behind this.
Okay, so for the people that feel like they were let down, look, it's get your interest level up, because what I think is going to happen here, Bill, is I think we're going to get a full run BTK style of from point A to point Z of what went down, because look, this is a death penalty case for all four of these people that were arrested. And if you review the charges that these four were facing,
yeah,
it's obvious to me a couple things. They being law enforcement and the prosecutors that are going to try these individuals, they have a full understanding of what went down.
Yes.
Walking into the courtroom, they already know exactly what went down and how it went down. Now, this is all according to Jake, because what we learn is after he pled guilty, which I think was late last month, late April, he pleads guilty to all of these charges, which involve, 8 counts of murder plus various other charges.
It was conspiracy, engaged in a pattern of corrupt activity, aggravated burglary, tampering with evidence, unlawful possession of dangerous ordnance, obstruction of justice, and forgery. I mean, lots of charges.
So and what we ended up learning was that Jake didn't just walk into the courtroom that day and save his own ass from being put to death by the state of Ohio. He's been talking to law enforcement for quite some time. This was all agreed upon that this was going to happen. It was news to the public, but it was all agreed upon that, hey, he's been feeding them information, telling them what he knows, or at least his version of the story. Often these guys will downplay their role and upplay the roles of the other perpetrators. But even before he starts talking, BCI very brilliantly set up these arrests, and all four individuals, from my understanding, Bill, were at 2 different locations, if not 3 different locations, but they were all arrested simultaneously.
Yes, this was a multiple jurisdiction effort to get these people arrested, and that's how you have to do it.
BCI decided, hey, we know that these 4 people were involved. We have enough evidence to secure an arrest warrant for all 4 of them, and we're going to take them down simultaneously so that one can't tip off the other, or the news could tip off the other, and they run. As you pointed out, they had already at one point went all the way to Alaska.
Right after the murders.
And then at some point they make their way back to Ohio, and I believe that they were arrested in Ohio and Kentucky. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're arrested almost simultaneously. And the charges that these 4 individuals face, what's obvious to me is that those charges are telling me that law enforcement believed that all 4 of them
participated,
were active. All, they may not have all pulled the trigger, but all 4 of them were involved in some form, physically involved in the attacks, not just planning them out, not just helping with the getaway, not just knowing what they know and fleeing to Alaska, but also, somebody drove these individuals. And I believe that it looks to me like there were 2 trigger persons, two actual shooters, and then maybe two of the others were just part of the transportation and such of getting to and from the crime scenes, but also a big part in planning the attacks themselves. And the thing that the stuff that's kind of trickling out here, Bill, is that it's starting to sound like maybe the mother was the actual mastermind, and her husband and 2 boys were more of the muscle. And Jake, of course, is the direct connection. That is our direct link from victim to perpetrator. That being with Jake with this custody battle, which is really bizarre to me too, because these Wagners, as hillbilly as they look, it's my understanding they were fairly well to do, that they were pretty successful people. They owned a good portion of land and real estate in Ohio. And look, I understand Southern Ohio property it's not Manhattan, baby. But it's still very valuable land. And I believe that they owned rental properties. This is, people that had come from generations of people that were successful in that area of Ohio, in that portion of our state.
Yeah. And they were also, one of the things that they were able to discover after they were arrested was, the picture they were painting was that the family was so clannish. This is what they said, I think, to the Columbus Dispatch, that was so insular and loyal to one another that they threatened every outsider who infiltrated their circle. So, it's interesting. And then another thing in that article, you mentioned before about how Jake had been cooperating with the investigators. And that's, the prosecutor announced that in court, that they had been working with Jake and that he was actually able to lead them to the guns that were used in the murders. And Jake actually even personally confessed to killing 5 of the 8 people. So that's pretty
wild. And it's just bizarre to me that if this was all over a custody battle and your family has some money, usually money wins in those situations a lot. I know that it's an uphill battle if you're a man and the courts usually want the son or daughter to stay with mom at least part of the time, if not the majority of the time. But I don't know. At the end of the day, there's rarely a good reason to kill anybody, and that's something that you've seen 100 times with your fantastic show, and we've seen it 100 times with our show.
Yeah.
When you find out the reasons why, it's never. It's not going to make sense to people like you and me, because we have a different heart than these killers. We have a different mind and a different soul than these killers. The world is made up of good and evil and always will be. And it just shows you the tipping point may not have to be so much for certain individuals they killed 8 people.
Yeah. I mean, they
killed 8 people
to eliminate people who would have had an impact on the custody issue. I mean, they literally planned this out to eliminate every single person that could claim custody to Jake's child.
Most people that if they're in a custody battle and they want to do something terrible to the mother or the father or, your ex-spouse or whoever, or if you believe that your child's being mistreated by your ex-spouse, normally what happens in those situations is, it's next weekend to have the baby, have the kid. We're going to just conveniently fly down to Argentina this weekend and never return. That's usually what happens in these custody battles. And we know that they took off to Alaska. Grow a freaking brain and a heart. Why couldn't you just take the kid and go to Alaska for some point?
Kidnapping is one thing. Murdering 8 family members for the child that you'll eventually not have anyway because you're a murderer now. It doesn't make much sense.
Did you see that at some point, when the 4 arrests first went down, that they actually charged the 2 grandparents? So this was Grandma A and Grandma B from this family, the Wagner family.
Oh, no kidding.
So the mom's mom and the dad's mom were both charged with some very small time charges. There's no reason to believe that either of them were actively involved in the attacks themselves, but it seems like my guess, and I know in one of the cases that the charge has been dropped. So maybe they ended up cooperating at some point and tried to drop that charge. But it seems to me that law enforcement at some point had a good understanding that these 2 elderly ladies, Grandma A and B, must have lied to them on stuff that they found out later that they knew. Even if it's something as simple as the Wagners went off and were trying to hide out in Alaska for a while, it could be something as simple as they said, I don't know where they are. They didn't tell me anything. And then later they're able to confirm that both of these ladies had individual ladies. That's a term that you earn. I shouldn't call them ladies there. That these women had knowledge of what was some form of knowledge of what was going on that was hindering the investigation.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to what the statement from the sheriff said, that anybody who lies to us is going to get charged. So, I mean, if he was sticking to his word, then that was that. And, obviously they must have made a case or made a deal to get those charges dropped. But again, the fact that Jake is going to be testifying against his family, it will be interesting to see what happens with this case. And it's terrible. It's an absolute tragedy that this family had to be wiped out by over a custody battle. I mean, this is just, it seems so far beyond the necessity of, common sense, or just, it's just fucking stupid, to put it bluntly.
Well, and the reason, do you agree with me? Do you think we're going to get the full story of
I do.
A to Z?
I do.
BTK style, where he just kind of stands there matter-of-factly, wearing some cheap suit, explaining to the court what and why was done. I think that's what's going to happen here. And the reason why I say that is because the state gave up a lot. Look, whether you're for the death penalty or against the death penalty, let's set that aside. Let's set those, opinions aside for a minute. But in any case, if you were to have a death penalty and you were to carry it out, I would hope that would be done when there's 8 people that are murdered in cold blood. So what the state gave up, and the state, they do want to exercise the death penalty. If they're going to have it, they want to use it. You don't want a state that's just using it willy-nilly. But again, in this case, let's say this would be a death penalty type case. This is where it would be warranted. They want to use it in this type of case in particular because of, one, it grabbed national headlines, and it says to the public of Ohio that this kind of activity is not only unlawful, and we won't tolerate it, but we won't tolerate it to the point of, if you do this, we will end you. And they want that to be clear to everyone. So the state is giving up a lot when they agree with Jake, hey, if you plead guilty, we'll take the death penalty off the table. But part of that plea agreement also was that they are now not going to charge the other members of his family with a death sentence. So we're looking at 4 individuals. And from my understanding, part of that plea agreement was that he's going to tell them everything that he knows. He's going to tell them how it all went down. And in trade, they're going to spare his life as well as the 3 lives of his mother, father, and brother.
Is that how you read that? That the family, the whole family got off of the death penalty?
That is how I read it. I could be incorrect, but my understanding was that what he was demanding in trade was not only do you not seek the death penalty against me, but also the people that I'm going to testify against, which would be the 3 members of his family.
That would be, that is a lot to give up. And yeah, that's if that's the that I'm looking that up right now, because that seems like a lot to give up. But again,
it is a lot, and I agree. I do think that is a lot. We are having, by the way, though, we are having some issues in our state with the death penalty anyway. And knowing that prosecutors may or may not be so actively seeking the death penalty.
Yeah. I know that they still face the same charges, but yeah, that just seems like so much to give up. And I know that the death penalty in general, again, we're not making a political point, but
we're not advocating for it.
We're not saying one way or the other. The point is, in a case like this, it is something that you feel like if a family of 8 is killed, the death penalty should be something that is on the table.
I'm not a big supporter of the death penalty, but I have gone on record saying that in certain cases, I'm like, yeah, baby. Like when Florida executed Ted Bundy, they threw a barbecue outside, a big party you could go to. Had I been old enough, I would have gladly attended that barbecue. Timothy McVeigh, yeah, baby, let's get rid of him too. There's times that I think that it's a good idea, but again, I'm not a big supporter of it overall. Now, one thing that I found incredibly intriguing, and I'm hoping that we learn more about this portion of the case here, Bill. I'd seen some stuff coming out that says that Jake, and he was involved with Hannah. They had this child together. That's the custody dispute. That he or somebody in the Wagner family had hacked into her Facebook account or something of hers on social media and had saw where she had communicated with somebody else saying something as simple as, if they want my baby, they're going to have to kill me. Or if he thinks I'm going to give up my baby, he's wrong. He'd have to kill me. Something like that. It's almost her words planted the idea at some point. And I don't know that to be true, but I've seen that in several publications recently, that's a portion of the case, that somebody in the Wagner family hacked into something of her social media.
Yeah.
And this would have been months and months before the killings.
Yeah, they hacked into her Facebook account and basically said that they would never agree to the terms of shared custody.
And again, we've talked about this before on your show. I cannot understand and never will be able to understand, again, because you and I have different hearts and minds and souls than these people that do these horrible acts. How the hell does a conversation start between son and mother, son and father, son and brother of, she says we're going to have to kill her to take the kid? I think we should. And then now we're actively having a conversation about killing someone, and then it escalates into killing the whole family, and then escalates into killing people in the family that live in other homes. It just will never make any sense to me.
Yeah. And it's just definitely one of those things. You just never really freaking understand why people would have these conversations, why in the world they would go from maybe bringing in lawyers to just annihilating a whole family.
Yeah.
It is such a jump that it's amazing.
Sell off a chunk of your property and go full force after these people legally.
Yeah.
With dollars and cents. And I don't mean CENTS. I mean cents.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is definitely, it's unbelievable to me that this kid, I mean, I don't think he's the ringleader. Like you said, I think it's probably either his, like you mentioned, the mother, could be his father. I mean,
and here's a dumb idea.
Months of planning.
Here's a dumb idea. You know these people. You clearly knew these people. If you want to go after custody of the kid, couldn't you kind of point out to somebody, hey, there's a grow operation on the property where this child is being raised or has ties to? I mean, there's all kinds of reasons you can end up with. All right, you've done upset me, Bill.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, again, back to the plea deal, you got to get something out of it. I don't find any.
I could be wrong, but that's the information I read, and maybe I just read it, I comprehended it incorrectly, but that was my takeaway from what I read.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of seen it like as I'm scrolling through here, but it's just one of those things that I haven't found a complete statement on it. It just says that he's, not going to face the death penalty. But again, doesn't matter either way. The family is obviously really fucked up, to put it bluntly. And from what I've read, Jake told them basically that they used silencers, so that would explain some of the stuff, that some of the reasons why they were able to commit these crimes so easily without shooting so many, shooting off so many bullets. And then they were caught. This is so typical of criminals, like they found shell casings at the house that matched the shell casings at the Rhoden murder scenes. It's like, if you're going to commit a murder and you're going to plan this shit out for months, what the fuck are you doing with the shell casings laying around your property? So, nobody said these criminals were geniuses.
No. Criminals make mistakes, thank God, and that's how they get caught.
Yeah. I mean, this is, like you said, it's not a letdown. It's intriguing to see where this case will go, what information will come out. I hope he does give us a BTK type of rundown. I'd love to know the ins and outs of why this happened. Basically, it's, where'd that email just go? It's one of those things that I can't wrap my head around. I can't wrap my head around this thing, because I see why you guys wouldn't cover it, in the sense that it's so complicated, man. Like, it's just really complicated. And I mean, when do you feel like they had an idea? I mean, we'll wrap it up here, because I know you've got to go. But do you feel like they had a good idea of where this case was headed sooner than what they let onto the public?
Yeah, I think from Jump Street, they probably hadn't figured out what victim was targeted, but I think, again, they were spot on with the idea of the killers knew the Rhoden family. There was some kind of beef between someone and one of the Rhoden family members. I think they believed that very early on in their investigation, maybe within the first 24 to 48 hours. And I think it was probably just a couple weeks after that they probably narrowed it down to just a couple members. Because what you're going to do, again, it's you're going to, whether you're a profiler or not, I've had this conversation with some detectives that don't really believe in the hocus pocus of profiling, of criminal profiling.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation that I've had is that I said, well, if you were responding to this type of call and you find this, and this at the crime scene, your experience as a detective, where's your go-to? Where are you looking for leads? Where are you looking for suspects right out the gate, with what you're seeing, what the crime scene is telling you, or what the type of crime is telling you? And the first thing they always say is, well, I want to learn more about the victim. I want to know more about the victim's inner circle. I want to know more about the forensics that I'm finding at the place, at the location. And essentially, the detectives are doing the exact same thing as profiling. They're just not putting it to pen to paper and writing out a long, detailed profile. They're taking pieces. And I think that probably what they very quickly did is, you're profiling everything, even as a detective who may or may not believe in profiling. You're going to figure out everything you can learn about the Rhoden family, about the individuals that were killed, about their properties, about their dealings. And so you profile the victims, you profile the location, and then in turn that leads you to profiling the criminal. And so I would guess that within a matter of a week or two, that they had narrowed down amongst the victims the targets, that they were prioritizing who was more likely the target amongst the 8 than the others. And they probably had that narrowed down to 2 or 3 of the victims very quickly. And from there, The great thing about computers and phones and all of that jazz, it's really helped investigators and detectives who have a good understanding of technology and the way that we live our lives today and in the social circles that we run in today, because all that stuff is forever there. It's, if you got a good forensic computer guy, a good forensic computer girl who can tear through somebody's phone and computers and their online activity, those are all breadcrumbs. And I think that's what they probably used. And they, on the surface, they may not have been aware of this custody battle, but Bill, I mean, can you imagine what probably happened? And this is a complete guess here. What probably happened is, if they probably went back multiple months before the killings on computers and phones, and at some point found an interaction between the Wagner family and someone in the Rhoden family, Hannah and Jake. And then it escalates into, you're seeing interaction between other people in the Rhoden family and other people in the Wagner family. Threats are made. Names are called. People are trying to upset one another. They're not agreeing on things. They see all that. And then I'm guessing at some point, poof, Wagner family quits communicating with the Rhoden family. Why? They've already decided they're going to, amongst themselves, they've decided we're going to kill these people. And so we do not want to keep communicating with them. And now, as a detective, you're going, wait a second, this custody dispute doesn't seem to have been resolved, or if it was resolved, and I don't know the particulars of the custody dispute. I want to be clear on that. If it was resolved, maybe it didn't work out in the favor of one individual. So why is there no more communication? Well, that is suspicious. Very suspicious. Yeah. Because you know what? The teenage boy that had the feud with some family over some road incident, traffic incident, whatever, that communication continued. That continued. And for someone to show up and not leave a bunch of forensic evidence, for there not to be some type of struggle, you're going, this is something different than this traffic incident feud that's going on.
For sure.
Because that would have started off as a shouting match, led to a fist fight, led to someone pulls a gun or a knife. This was something else. And I think it's an excellent question. I think it's one that we're only going to know the answers to once we get the confession. And I think here in the like we see with the Delphi, with what they're telling us in Delphi, once we have this guy, we're happy to tell the public everything we knew. And I think that you might see that in this situation too, with the Pike County case, because we've had Mike DeWine, the Attorney General, who's now the governor of Ohio. We've had the Attorney General's office, as well as BCI and other investigating agencies at the time. There were multiple agencies involved in working this investigation. It was a huge undertaking by the state of Ohio, as well as involvement from agencies in other states. So I want to make sure that, we applaud all of their efforts and their hard work. But I think one thing that we've seen, and we rarely see this in cases, Bill, where very upfront and forward, almost immediately after the discovery of the bodies, and as soon as this thing hits the news, what do we have? We have, at the highest level in our state and in the area, law enforcement telling the citizens and telling the community, we will find who did this and we will arrest them. This will be solved. And when you have that, like you see in Delphi and in a few other cases, I think we're going to end up getting the full, complete story at some point. And I think it's going to come from the perpetrators as well as law enforcement.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think it's interesting if you look at what, the Wagners were doing. I mean, they sold their property, I think, like 3 weeks after the murders for $165,000 and fled to Alaska. I mean, it's like, is there not a bigger red flag to investigate?
Again, they're morons. I mean, they were skillful and intelligent enough, apparently, to put together a really good plan leading up to the murders. It was 10 minutes after the murder that they have no plan.
Yeah, what happened to the kid that you wanted to have custody of? Because you left and you went to Alaska and you didn't have the kid, so didn't really work out for you in the end, did it? So, I think at the end of the day, we have a case here that is got a lot of red herrings. There's a lot of information that will come out, hopefully. And I would like to know about like the planning that you mentioned, because we do know that Jake has said that it was planned for months. I mean, months. Like, and then the idea that they practiced this, like some sort of mob, mafia or militia. I'm thinking, it's just disgusting. So, think that they had to go this far to retain custody, just absolute disgraceful family. So on that note, any final thoughts, Nick?
No, but I am intrigued to see where this thing goes and what news. I think it's going to be fairly quick that we're going to start seeing some more news and tidbits come out about it. But
yeah, guilty pleas will start coming, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you have somebody that's going to testify against you, the gears are probably already in motion to get some pleas, and hopefully with those pleas, they are required to tell a detailed account of, the whole incident, because I think, like you said, that's something that we need to know, and it does make an impact on the severity of the sentences. I know that they all face 8 consecutive life sentences, but
one thing I am hoping that they do is, once everybody's going to be found guilty in this situation. We know that. I mean, Jake's already told us so. But I'm really hoping that the state will conveniently place these individuals in separate prisons. Look, they took a lot of family members away from other family members. These Wagners should not have the right to see each other or communicate with each other at all. So once this is all adjudicated, I hope that they separate them and put them off in the corners of the different corners of the state, and don't put them in the same facilities.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. And kudos to the investigators for coordinating with all the different jurisdictions to make this arrest happen, and to be able to work a suspect like Jake to become an informant for him, basically. And not really, I mean, yes, I see, you sent me that article, and I do see that they did take the death penalty off the table officially for the whole family, but again, they're not getting out. So as a taxpayer, it's a little annoying that we'd have to pay for it, but again, if they give us answers and closure, then I think that's what they want at the end of the day. So, Nick, I can't thank you enough for again joining me for another marathon run of an episode, and I know you got to run because you are way past the time that you said you had to go. So
well, and it's Bill, it's always a privilege for me and a fun time for me to talk true crime with you, and especially Ohio cases. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly a privilege for me. So I appreciate it. So thank you very much, Nick.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again this week for another episode of Who Killed? And many thanks to Nick of the True Crime Garage podcast for joining me to discuss this complicated case, the Pike County Massacre. Their show can be found wherever you get your podcasts, but all of their back catalog can be found on Stitcher. And they release new episodes on Tuesdays and Wednesdays each week. As you guys know, I do drop new episodes of Who Killed every Friday, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. As always, if you enjoy this podcast and my other shows, you can help contribute by clicking on the link in the show notes or via the Venmo app with my username at Bill-Huffman-3. Again, every contribution, big or small, helps keep these slow burn podcasts running. You can also help support the show by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite shows, because those 5 stars do help keep the important cases that I cover, such as Amy's or Molly Bish, in the news. If you'd like to stay up to date on the cases that I have covered, as well as the new shows that I have in the pipeline, please follow me on Twitter at BillHuffman3. And again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. It wouldn't be a show without you. So until next time, be healthy, and as always, stay safe.
I'm an American vigilante. I have a question for you. What would you do if someone you cared about was abducted, taken from you? Would you call me? Would you care about how I got them back? Download American Vigilante now.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes per details.